Nothing like unwanted house guests here on Bejor Please, a vile visit to Bejor. My name is Joseph.
And under no circumstances, and I don't care how many people on the space station die, let the whole fucking thing get crumpled up through the space bubble. Under no circumstances will I even so much as think of calling Jean-Luc Picard for advice. I'm your co-host, Peter.
It's probably the most understandable decision Benjamin Sisko's ever made.
Is it? I don't. That was the real fucking zinger to me on that one.
I'm not calling him.
Your son's there, though, man. Like, I can appreciate a good fucking grudge, but man, when you got blood on the line.
I want to say, speaking of things I appreciate, okay, I appreciate our Discord server, which I am going to open up a bit more. I've been hesitant because I don't want bots in it, but we've had a lot more people listening to the show. We thank you. We appreciate you. If you would like to be part of our Discord, from hopefully even before this episode comes out, there'll be consistent links in the show descriptions for you to find and join. We keep it very adult and very normal, so please keep that in mind. This is not going to be a shit posting Discord, and you'll have to decide for yourself if that's rules you can abide by. And in particular, we've had to create a new channel in our Discord because a sub game that our longest listening fans have enjoyed as part of going through DS9 is that you don't know anything about it, and we all do because we've all watched it a million times, and we've had to create the No Peters Allowed so that we can talk about the things you don't know yet and talk about your commentary that I have to not respond to.
Go ahead and say what it is. It's a channel full of dick pics, I'm sure.
How we're hiding our porn, yes, obviously. Obviously, like I'm we're not as adult as a lot. No, I mean, I think it. I wish in the fullness of time, you're going to be able to go into this channel and observe it. It really is people who are vicariously living through you, and like looking forward to the days certain things happen and being able to listen to it. There's the building anticipation for things will be years in our future.
Amazing that we didn't have to make that channel for Enterprise. How strange.
It's very odd. No one really cared.
We've got the Discord server for podcast conversations, or if you are old and don't want to be bothered with Discord, we've always got the old Facebook out there with the trauma support group, which there should be links floating around for that. So come to one, come to both, and have a good time and interact with us, because that's what we're in it for, is good community discussion.
Yes, and you can always contact me at bejorplease@gmail.com to access any of that, or at bejorplease on Twitter. You can DM me, and I'll happily get you connected to the rest of our little community here of folks that are taking a journey through Trek in a fun way, joyful way, a way only a couple middle-aged nerds can. And to that end, Peter, this week, what did we watch?
We watched Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 7, Q-less. First aired February 6th, 1993. Written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Story by Hannah Louise Shearer. Directed by Paul Lynch.
We dreaded doing this one. I dreaded a bit doing this one because Lord have mercy are the Q episodes of Voyager. Dog
wretched.
Awful. Ruin the Q as a thing. And I guess
listen, Winnie the Q episode
fine.
Was all right.
It was fine.
That's the one where the guy wants to commit suicide, and we get to see that essentially the Q continuum is a place of stagnation. We understand why Q is a big deal. The John version of Q is this radical free thinker that's really shaken things up. And then it drops off steeply from there. And to use the Voyager trajectory of Q episodes, I see a very similar thing here. Like, this is a Q episode. The first note of my book for this episode, as I sat down to watch it, was I had a very bad taste in my mouth still from Voyager. But again, for being the first entry into Q in a different non-next generation property, it wasn't terrible. And unlike Voyager, someone in Deep Space Nine production room had the common sense to say, hey, let's just stop here and not go back to this well ever again.
It is a not a taste that tastes great with DS9 when thinking about Q. He's not a character that really fits with what you're trying to do. But as a one-off story, it works well enough, right? Because we're still dealing with a TNG era Q who's a little bit more, I'm just kind of being a dick, and I'm more of a trickster god than a simp.
I'm not trying to fuck Catherine Janeway. And
And
more
getting
importantly,
clowned by Ensign Kim.
I'm not letting punk bitch junior officers stunt on me when I could snap my fingers and, like, I don't know, put the fucking parasite necktail bugs in everybody as a funny little joke. I liked the episode because it focused more on Vash, who
Yes,
I
it did.
think was always a strong character in Next Gen, and even more interesting when I found out that Patrick Stewart left his wife because of this woman.
Oh
Out of
yes.
character.
Oh yeah.
You know, here's our favorite term, post-scarcity utopia of the Federation, where no one has a reason to want for anything and everybody could be living in the lap of luxury. And here you've got the scandalous bitch who is like, she time traveled into 2023, 2024 and just found out, like, what are the things that the British are hated for the most, and that's going to be her
It's made her whole
robbing all.
personality. Like, I'm gonna steal shit from other cultures and
We're
put
going to take
it
it,
and sell it off.
and I'm going to go the next step. We're not even going to go for the museum. We're just going to eBay all this shit.
Yeah, I'm like Indiana Jones, but a capitalist.
Which I'd rather watch her on screen, I think, than Indiana Jones. She's an interesting character. It's rare to see someone that thoroughly rotten. And I like her interplay with Q throughout it because they're both strong personalities, strong girl power thread through it where she's just telling this dude to fuck off who could do horrible, terrible things to her and does horrible, terrible things to her. And then meanwhile, in the background, you've got this admittedly basic ass, we gotta
Whoops, there's a
find.
space baby. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the super surprise ending, but you know what's essentially a we have to find the bomb before it blows up the station episode, which I don't know, man. I'm thinking about the one we just watched, which was what was the Hunted or something? Was that what it's called?
The one that we watched last week?
Yeah, what was it? The
Yeah, it was
Hunted?
Captive Pursuit. The most dangerous game.
Most
really.
dangerous. Like, it feels so derivative. And, you know, when we start watching, especially this shit back in the 90s, early 90s, 93, did this start a trope or is this tapping into a pre-existing trope? Certainly the most dangerous game was already out there, but like, is that the first time we really saw that in a sci-fi setting? Or is that just already tired at this point? So there's shit, again, when we're watching the stuff from 93, whatever. There's a bomb on the station. We're going to have to find it. Weird power fluctuations. Like, just feels very overdone in Star Trek. And was this one of the first times they did it, or was already a boring premise by now?
I mean, you know, it's a classic premise for any kind of like television show that's like action adventure oriented. So I'll forgive that they kind of went down that road. At least they gave it some interesting dressing, and they used DS9 well as a setting for the story, particularly because of Quark, and that
Yes.
it's like space Casablanca, and it's a
Yes.
place where shady shit can go down, and like Cisco's just kind of has to let it happen, right? And doesn't really interfere with any of, like, he doesn't even comment on the fact that these things are being auctioned.
Quark is so far, I would say, the strongest side character I've seen in any Star Trek. You know, you go through Voyager, Enterprise, certainly. I think you could really clip a lot of characters off the side before you really started losing a big chunk of what the show is at a conceptual level. And the past 7 episodes we've watched, if Quark wasn't in there, I would say at least 3 of them just would not function.
Yeah,
So much of
and they
DS9,
knew that too.
like so much of DS9, it's a story about dirty life, or a life of scandal, or the precipice between crime and order, and that's really the criminal element is wholly on Quark's shoulders.
The whole premise of the show is to be able to kind of unlock the power of doing non-Starfleet people, right? Like if we have it on the space station, we create this unique premise, then I can have a main character, like someone who's in the main credits, who's a civilian, right? And it's not Guinan showing up like a few times a season. It's
Special
all the
guest,
time.
yeah.
Like, and I can start to build that into the story and do more of that. And Jake's the same way, and eventually Nog, and that part of the cast actually continues to expand. So when like Lita and other, Garrick, like these are characters that you would never have access to on TNG, right? Because the premise doesn't permit it. And the fact that they leaned in super hard right off the rip to say, we're going to make sure that the people who are watching the show knows this isn't like a little side gig. This is a major part of the universe that you're going to be a part of here, is Starfleet people kind of having to navigate circumstances we as the viewer has never had to see them navigate before. This episode isn't really necessarily about that, because honestly, all the Starfleet people are busy doing something that would be very common on TNG, to the point where
Yeah.
Q actually makes a meta reference about it. But it's in the background. It's happening right here. And, we get to kind of see the melding of the two happen. And that's where I think the episode shines and overcomes what's otherwise a mismatch of Q being there. He's just not like, you're trying to be gritty and you're trying to be real. And as much as this is still an unspoiled version of Q at this point, he still doesn't work here. He doesn't.
It's interesting that you invoke this like DS9 as a looking glass into civilian life, because that's, what is Earth like? That's a question that we've asked many times through Voyager specifically. And then when we got into Picard season 1, which boo, and then season 3, which was yay, you got to see a lot of Earth. And I can't even really take season 1 as like a good credible view as to what it would look like under Berman. But I think in the end, and it's reflected through Q here, Earth is boring and there's no good stories to tell there. It's a complete civilization. They're living happy, post-scarcity utopia. Like, how good can the stories really be there? But when you take members of Earth who have not gone through training, who have not sworn oaths, and who are not the best of the best a la Starfleet, and you're putting them out there to deal with the same bullshit space dangers, now you can see these people do interesting things and behave in interesting ways. And then you mix in all the other alien non-Federation civilians, and it's a great vehicle to tell stories, and I look forward to seeing where they go with these things.
So speaking of where we're going forward, we have our teaser this week, and it is Julian Bashir taking a swing at a
The
90s
ugliest
hottie.
Bajories.
Like an early 90s hottie, which are they don't hold up real well. It's just, I don't know what it was the tragic no butts era. I don't know if like Zoomers out there know this, but in the early 90s, for some reason, white people in particular thought butts were bad. And it was I'm really happy that I grew up in an era kind of that was after the realization came in that butts were in fact good.
It's the post Sir Mix-a-Lot era. He opened the eyes to many. The Bajoran that Bashir's making a pass at, like, I don't know if they didn't just lock the Bajoran makeup down, but she looked, I thought, pretty gruesome. But he's going on describing a battle. It turned out to be him taking a test. And the whole time he's doing this, you've got Miles O'Brien, the next table over, listening and just kind of rolling his eyes. And I thought that was a fun pairing, because I know that these two are going to become holodeck buddies.
Yeah, they become best friends.
So I really was expecting Bashir to be talking about like some fun holodeck program that he had been running, and like that to spark a conversation with Miles. Like, oh, I kind of want to get into that. No, instead it's just horn dog Bashir making a pass at yet another movie. So he's, again, I like that he is real horny, but he is not predatory or, he doesn't come off as like a creep.
Young and horny. I mean, that's fine. That's enough.
Um,
Enthusiastic.
but they don't get to hang around there. They get called off. They run up. There's a runabout docked. You got Dax, crewman nobody, stuck in there. There's no power. The life support's failing. Apparently, everybody forgot about transporters. They're trying to push this fucking exterior door open on the runabout like it's something you can, like it's some dressing room door at JCPenney's you're going to be able to manhandle your way into.
Fortunately, O'Brien's very prepared. He brought the correct power converter and juices the door up enough that they get the thing open. Dax is fine, and so nobody's fine. But there's a third passenger. Just randomly picked somebody up in the Gamma Quadrant, which is weird because she's a human. But O'Brien actually recognizes her right away as Vash.
This is the worst scene of the entire thing. Because right there in front of Sisko, he goes, Vash! I recognize you from the Enterprise. We got a preconceived relationship. We know each other. I got information on you. You hear that, Sisko? I know this lady. Right here, her name's Vash. And then Sisko blacks this entire scene out for like the next 40 minutes.
For like 10 minutes and then returns back to him and be like, hey, O'Brien, didn't you fucking know her? Didn't I hear that? Like,
a little bit longer than 10 minutes.
And it's pretty early in the episode that he's having a because they're on when they come back to the runabout is when he's like, how do you fucking know this lady?
I've been asking around about everybody. I figured I finally stooped down to talking to your non-commissioned ass. What's the deal with her?
Well, he did just commit a crime last week, so he's a bit in the doghouse.
Yeah, but they also fist bumped on it. So they're leaving the runabout. This is all cold open. Everybody leaves, and then you see there's a new crewman who is wearing I believe he's already wearing the jumpsuit at that point.
No, he's wearing the classic TNG at this point. He doesn't wear the jumpsuit until he has the scene with Sisko. Yeah, because he snaps into it on purpose.
I think you're wrong.
He thinks
we'll go back and check.
The new uniform's neat.
Yeah, because he's stupid. Everybody leaves a runabout, and then we see a guy working on the control panel. He turns around and looks in his Q, and it's the most low energy, worst Q reveal of all time.
Agreed. I agree.
It's terrible.
When the episode begins in earnest, it's Bashir both checking up on Vash and us finding out Bashir likes a MILF, I guess, because he's super into her too.
Yeah, but who doesn't?
Yeah, well, so let's talk about her, right? Jennifer Ettrick, famous homewrecker of the Stewart family. But legit, if you don't know the lore on this, she was actually I think at one point even engaged to Patrick Stewart after breaking up his prior marriage when they met shooting Captain's Holiday. So when you see them making out on Risa, that's them making out, all right.
The Horgana is a powerful artifact, all right, and even replicas can still invoke the same power of attractions.
And me, cracking wise about lack of butts aside, obviously, Ms. Hetrick, a fine-looking lady, and she is got a great personality in this character. You've already talked about that. Vash is a very well-realized, bit character to kind of bring back and insert into DS9 in a way that actually works out much better than other choices might. She's a profiteer. We know this from the times she's shown up. She's a bit kind of just loose, and her desire to use people, just kind of have a good time and be Lady Indiana Jones of space. And her
just as dirty as Quark too, man. That's the big one there.
Yeah. Oh, her and Quark immediately getting to the fact that Vash immediately understands that Quark is going to be her business partner and seals the deal by jacking him off as the very first thing that she does, because she knows that's what's necessary to lock this in.
Get her done.
Communicates so much, because let's not get it twisted, right? Umax, the whole ear thing, that's given a Ferengi a JO. Okay,
that's a let's see, OTEHJ. That's OTLHJ, over the lobe hand job. Very gratuitous. That's
Yeah, just goes
I'm
right for it. Just like, hold on, no, I'm gonna pull you towards me, and I'm gonna start double fisting your ears
I'm going
before
cross
we've really
country.
gotten to know each other.
I'm going cross country skiing on these lobes. Hey,
The
real quick.
Hakta lady is very
Oh,
popular right
please,
now. Well, Vash
dude.
fucking beat you to it.
Let's sidetrack this fucking Hawktub bullshit. The most lowbrow worst meme I've ever seen. Like, it was barely worth more than a like. I refused to even watch the fucking video until like 4 days into my like various media feeds being nothing but that. And there's such low rent shit memes that none of them are fucking funny. I fully believe that this entire thing is just fucking AI's first venture into like trying to make a meme happen, and that it's some sort of like training exercise of like, what can we force into the public zeitgeist? There's no soul to any of these memes whatsoever, and it's such a hollow experience of filth.
It was a mildly funny, if a bit obviously blue moment on a random, interview on the street. It was a chuckle of this like, lady with this kind of prim, southern accent.
I'm just saying it. The whole thing reeks of AI to me, like pure AI.
Yeah, I don't get it either, and the idea that AI is behind it is something that, let's just say, I see what you're saying. Who knows? But I also don't get it. But anyway,
So real quick,
Vash is the true Hakta lady, though. I mean, she just like, I don't need to tell you. I'm just gonna do it.
I like she tricks him into like, hey, get that bottle of wine here while I jump you from behind. I want to make a real quick list here. The DS9 cameo list. We got Vash, we got Lursa and Baitor. Who else have we gotten so far?
Well, Q, obviously.
Oh, Q, yeah. Anybody else?
That is. Hold on. Let me check. I mean, we've had Picard and Emissary.
Oh yeah, Picard.
Gotta count that. That's it for like characters that have been that are are TNG characters that have come in so far.
All right. So Vash comes in, she gets checked out. You got Julian making a pass at her. She's making waves. We get treated to one of the worst safety deposit box organizations in the quadrant, right? She's got all these precious artifacts. She doesn't want to keep them in her bedroom, and she goes to log these things. And basically, it's her opportunity to see what the big MacGuffin's going to be, right? She's going through this real snooty ass Bajoran guy who's running the local self-storage place. And he's doing this very invasive inventory where he's describing everything she's putting in, like, good things there's no family jewels or anything you really want to hide from there. And then they eventually get to the box that swings open, and there's a big glowing honeycomb that's just pulsating with plot energy. And he's like, oh my God, I've never seen anything this beautiful before. She's like, I know, isn't it cool? It's totally going to wreck the fucking space station, maybe kill all of us.
Obviously. Like, boy, I wonder if this glowing MacGuffin in a box that everyone talks about how they've never seen anything like it could possibly be the proximal cause for all the terrible things happening. I'm sorry. I don't think you need to be an expert in Star Trek or science fiction. I think you just need to be a sentient human being and be like, golly, I think it might be the thing that glows. That just
they're sitting at the production
here.
meeting and they're like, all right, we got to come up with what the MacGuffin's going to look like. Option one. So we've got this skull, and it's going to be pulsating red, and also it's going to be weeping blood nonstop. And then we've got this other thing, which is the honeycomb egg that's going to be pulsating with orange light. And they're like, you know what? We really want to make sure everybody understands exactly what's going on here. The skull, unfortunately, is not communicating the plot relevance strong enough. So let's go with the glowing honeycomb of power. Everybody's like, yeah, cool. So they seal it away. The fucking, like, my second favorite part of the episode is where this dickhead safe store owner is standing there. He's like, all right, pick your pin code, and proceeds to just stand there and look at her hands. And she's like trying to cover up what her code is. And it's like, I'm pretty sure in 1993 passwords were a thing, and there was already established like etiquette that you turn around when someone's putting their code in.
I did like that they took a moment for her to be paranoid enough about it. I mean, like, she's distrustful because she's a fucking Tomb Raider. She is Laura Croft in space.
It was
So,
a fun way,
I
again,
steal
to
from people. People will probably steal from me.
absolutely, and it was a fun way for them to get the MacGuffin out without her having a conversation she didn't need to have with main cast. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "Hey, oh my god, you've been out in the
The
Gamma
Gamma Quadrant.
Quadrant for 2 years. How'd you get out there? How could you've ever gotten out there? Oh my gosh, it's such a mystery. Gosh, gee willikers, how'd you get out there? I'm going to ask everybody how you got out there, minus this fucking guy who stood there and acted like he knew you inside and out on the runabout, Miles O'Brien, who just so happens to know that, you were shacking up with Q and could have rolled all that out. Or maybe Miles have 2 fucking brain cells to rub together and be like, Q is a big pain in the ass. And the last time I saw Vash, she was with Q.
Yeah,
Maybe I
it is
should
a bit
tell.
of a stretch that's not the first thing that O'Brien brings up to say, like, oh, it must have been Q, because, like, he seems to know all about the situation. But he relates early to Cisco when he asks, like, yeah, that's the Captain Picard's ex-girlfriend, to which Cisco's like, it doesn't seem like his type. Like, he's kind of a dick, of course. And it's like, well,
It doesn't seem like her type. She doesn't come down from the roof attached by hoses with her spine wiggling to get into her Borg body.
you sounded a little bit more like Bernie Sanders there, which I think would be a great character to have in DS9. Some sort of like a Ferengi reformist who's like a total socialist, like the millionaires and the billionaires with all of the gold plus latinum. We must find a way to organize a labor to redistribute all of the latinum in the Alpha Quadrant.
Well, listen, if I'm doing a Cisco impression, I will err on the side of caution and sound like Bernie Sanders before I sound like some bad black caricature that's going to get
It's like we don't get canceled.
All right. I'm just saying it's a ridiculous series of events, and I would like to think that that somehow Cisco has knowledge of the Borg Queen that always has to come down from the ceiling, and that's John Luke's type. And he wouldn't really be super wrong, but
true. So before we can talk more about who Vash is, we have the plot happen, which is the power's being drained from the station, and eventually it's going to start moving towards the wormhole, which will destroy the station. None of that's actually particularly interesting. It's all very paint by numbers, and I think we'll largely ignore it.
The interesting points to this plot is a reinforcement that the crew of Deep Space Nine is not the best of the best.
Yes, true. Okay, yeah. That is, and it is pointed out.
We talked about it more during Voyager, that we're not dealing with the flagship. But Voyager was still hot shit, right? It was a fresh off the line. Well, those aren't Nebula classes. It was
an Intrepid class light cruiser,
which God only knows what its mission profile was, because it seemed to change all the time between deep space reconnaissance.
Sometimes it was a hot shot warship. Sometimes it was for exploration. It all depends on who was writing the episode. Yeah.
It's not a schlub crew, right? And we really got a great look at a schlub crew through the lens of the Orville, which did wonderful things. And then the Cerritos and Lower Decks. Enterprise was not seasoned, but they should have been the best of the best for the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think Deep Space Nine is really going to represent, for Berman era Trek, like, what do middle to lower people look like, right?
I think middle is the right way to describe him. No one's a buster, but no one's the best, right? Bashir is new, but he was second in his class at his medical school. He's hot shot, but he's green, right?
He also intentionally said, I want to rough it. I don't want a good posting. I want to be out in the middle of this shit.
Dax is clearly an accomplished scientist, but she's got baggage, right? Like, she's Trill. Like, you're not quite exactly sure what you're supposed to do with her. She's not bad at her job, but it comes with complications that are probably best handled by someone who already knows who she is. You've got an engineer who's good at his job, but he's basically an up-jumped mechanic, right? Like he's the right man for this job, but he's not Geordi, right? He's not out there problem solving by coming up with some new doohickey. And that's exactly basically what Q ends up saying here as they're dealing with the problem, which is it's taking them a long time to figure out what's going on, and it kind
And
of annoys him.
and Cisco too, which the first thing Q says to Cisco is, "Are you here because you're being
You fucked up?
punished?
Yeah, like this is a terrible assignment. Why the fuck are you here?
Why are you
No wonder
still
you're
here?"
not commanding a starship. You fucking suck.
So they have this dilemma, which is, you know, and of course hindsight's always 2020, but you're talking about hyper competent Starfleet people, so I think we can be a little more critical. Hey, here's the exact same fucking problem between the runabout and now the space station. What is the same between these two things? And at never at any point they're like, I wonder if there was something on the runabout that's now here that could be causing this. Let's look at a manifest. Oh, look at that. There's a fucking glowing honeycomb plot device. Like, I like that they don't just instantly. You also don't have, a fucking android or the universe's most smartest human being, 7 of 9.
Right, true.
It takes them a long time, like right down to the final minute. And to be fair, it is a zany plot, and I think it's a fair assumption that, hey, this is just Q, and we're not going to read too much into the other stuff because we've got this trickster god, or what they call him, the god of lies. That was a great piece of dialogue. The people of Buttholiest 6, would they call you the god of
The god of
lies?
lies.
And then he's like, what do you say? It was a term of endearment.
Yes.
Or they called me that affectionately, I think.
While this plot is going on, Q finally kind of makes a real appearance in the episode, and it's clear that his relationship with Vash has soured. Vash feels a little, shall we say, smothered by Q. Vash wants to girl boss on her own. She doesn't want Q kind of hanging around all of the time, and is trying to jettison her. But as we remember from the last time Vash was on screen, of course, is that Q's kind of honor bound by his word to Picard to keep her safe. But of course, that doesn't mean keeping you safe in a way that's like coddling you. It's going to be in the way I choose to interpret it. So it kind of factors into what's going on here, which is, he feels he still has a responsibility because while he's a hyper powerful demigod that can snap his fingers and almost do anything, he feels he has to fulfill what he told Jean-Luc Picard he was going to do because of the elevated position he's placed Picard in regards to him being the assessor of humanity's potential. I liked that was kind of in the ether there without necessarily being spoken aloud. It's something there for you if you're a Trek fan, if you're a TNG fan, but also not necessary for someone who didn't know that.
How do you feel about the amount of time that Picard and the Enterprise are invoked through this episode?
It's definitely one of those things they made a point of doing because they're trying to keep that TNG audience involved and kind of making it so that you're clear this is all a connected universe. I mean, TNG is at its pinnacle right now. It's season 6, right? Like they're just stone cold crushing it out there, and you want those people to come watch this show. So that's why O'Brien's on there. It's why you've had Lursa and Baturo show up. It's why you've got a Q episode that I'm sure they promoted the shit out of back then. Like you want that.
It's appropriate. You've got 3 members of the cast on this episode. You got Vash, Q, and O'Brien, who are all heavily connected with each other to varying degrees through the Enterprise. Because of Picard, it makes sense that they talk about them as much as they do. I feel like it starts to cross a line where it's too much. It starts giving me like shades of These Are the Voyages, where it's like, all right, I'm here for DS9. We don't need to talk about, you don't need to name drop next gen as much as you are. And I think maybe that's part of the reason when you say like, these are characters that don't really work well in the setting. Like part of that might be having Q there around O'Brien. It doesn't make sense for them not to say Enterprise and Picard as much as they do. It's unneeded. we don't need to introduce this character that's going to invoke this situation that becomes
Yeah, and
uncomfortable.
that's the awkward part of this, and it's why I think they wisely stayed away from doing it after this, right? Like they kind of
Right.
got. I think they picked up like, no, this isn't quite right. They didn't fuck it up real super bad, but they didn't also like this didn't work, right?
Through the whole thing too, Q's still rocking that. You're right. I went back and watched it, so you're right.
Thank you. You're a big
He's
man
still
to admit that.
rocking the Enterprise uniforms, which I gotta say again, compared to the fucking jumpsuits, at least in like low def 480, the fucking jumpsuits are atrocious, and I hate them. It is interesting though to see the old comm badge with the gold circle before they switched over to the bracket, and like honestly, I couldn't tell you which one I like more, man. Like the bracket obviously looks better, but just that circle has so much history behind it that
Yeah,
it
I've
just
always
makes
kind
me
of liked
happy.
the circle more.
It just makes me happy to see it.
Or after this scene with Q is when Quark shows up, and that's when, of course, we talk about Vash like sexually assaulting him in a way that he enjoys immediately. And yes, that's a match made in heaven, right? You're two dirty dealers, you're two capitalists, immediately getting together, seeing each other a business partner, and they ride that all the way through the episode.
I love he shows up and Q blinks him away,
Yeah,
maybe just unmakes him or whatever the fuck happens. And then he pops back in, and like Quark is very aware that he had just been blinked and that something is very wrong about the situation. And he just pushes straight forward. Like,
yeah,
you could be like, I don't know, I might be having an aneurysm right now. I just blacked out. I got missing time. Or maybe I was teleported to the border world of Zen in Half-Life. Like, who the fuck knows what just happened right now? But there is money in the water, and I want it, goddammit.
yeah. I gotta push past whatever strange cosmic thing just happened to me, and we're moving on. Latinum waits for no man. I gotta get that profit.
It's been interesting to also watch uh, the evolution of gold press latinum as a term, because first earlier people were talking about paying with gold, and then there was something about latinum, and now finally this episode 7 we've arrived at gold pressed latinum as the clear preferred currency of those who are still using barbaric money.
They start to kind of approximate a, I guess we'll call it a system, because there's different denominations. There's slips, there's strips, there's bars, you know. So they start to kind of talk about. I don't think they necessarily like ever lay it out very
Yeah.
specifically, but they give an indication that there's like different denominations of the currency that represent.
Did they ever
different
get
values.
around to specifically citing the loonie as a commodity?
The Canadian dollar?
Well, the loonie format gold pressed latinum. That's not like one of the denominations between like strips and clips.
No, I don't think so.
It's a real miss.
So after Quark gets his ears JO'd, that's
what if earwax just poured out?
Oh, Quark, that was so quick.
Oh,
not a man of stamina. That's when we have suddenly Quark that's when Q shows up in the Replomat and disposes of Dr. Bashir for the rest of the episode, because Bashir shows up, wants a date. Vash says yes. Q's like, I'm not having that. You're not Ensign Kim. You're not allowed to talk back to me. And like finds him in the Replomat and tells him he's going to go take a nap. And he literally spends the rest of the episode asleep until the very end of the episode. He wakes up like, man, I feel great. I feel like I slept for days. Hey, anything go on? And walks off like just
everybody's dead in the sick bay because I wasn't there to take care of them. Moops.
Kind of weird is happening. But this little intervention does cause Miles O'Brien to notice that Q is there. So he immediately runs up to Ops and is like, hey, Commander, listen, we got a problem. There is a god here. He's kind of a lot to deal with. And Sisko goes, don't worry. Starfleet is competent enough that we are all briefed on who this fucking guy is in case he ever shows up.
We were all recalled to a Holiday Express Inn.
Yes, of course.
It was actually an Excelsior. We had a big conference. I know all about this guy. I got a copy of the slideshow deck. I know how to deal with him. Give me some more information on all of this. Oh, Vash and Q actually know each other. You never asked me this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you they know each other. They met in the Sherwood Forest. And I'm going to go ahead and just talk about zany TNG plot, which, like, if this didn't just stick out like an ugly sore thumb of just like how dumb the Q episodes can really get, to have to be like a Starfleet officer, be like, you know, I've killed a lot of Cardassians, some of them with my bare hands. I've done stuff I'm PTSD'd as fuck. Also, yeah, I was in Sherwood Forest. It wasn't even a
Uh,
holodeck episode. I, I got another story about Riker became a Q, and there was like toy soldiers, and Wesley Crusher got stabbed with a bayonet. I saw all that.
like at some point, do you think like he sits down, like everyone's like, Miles, can you? What was this fucking ship you were on? Like, what is this career you've had? Like, because we thought you were a gritty war veteran, and then you're like, yeah. And then I spent 4 years on the Enterprise, and there was nothing but shenanigans. Like Moriarty showed up a couple times. It was it was kind of weird actually, and it
Really
felt like
kind
I
of
was
weird.
in a different universe.
I mean, there was the time the Borg cut a cylinder out of the saucer section and just abducted people.
Yeah,
That
and
was
things
fucked
got
up.
super real all of a sudden.
That was real fucked up. Like, at a certain point, you just got to sit there and be like, I don't know if my memories are real or if maybe I just inhaled some bad space radiation and I just have hallucinations that register as like legit. Space is crazy. There's a reason we're all on super duper Starfleet Prozac, and we all decide to stay in this incredibly dangerous profession when we could be at home on Earth drinking pina coladas and not having to work in the morning.
Cisco wants to know more about Q, so Cisco goes down to try and talk to Vash in Quark's bar. Quark's like, don't know where she is, and he states his intention of like, want to know more about Q, and so Q's just like turns around and goes, I'm right here. You want to talk to me? You just talk to me. That's when he starts insulting him. Like, do you want to be on a fucking on the ass end of space, managing a fucking pilot station that used to be run by a bunch of Huns? Is this what you wanted to do? And he kind of talks a whole bunch of shit, and Cisco just gets immediately into his face and tells him, get the fuck off. I don't have time for your shit. I don't care about whatever the fuck is going on. I know what you are. And it's like, I don't really have anything I can do about it except be mad at you.
Do you
And
think that was part of the Starfleet briefing? Or do you think that was like the last slide of the deck was like things not to do? Uh, get
antagonize him.
get up in this dude's face and try to bully him and shove him around like you are going to take money that he does not want to give you. It's a real Cisco bend on things, and obviously the effect here is to clearly establish that Picard and Cisco are very different people, which Q openly comments on. And I like that, by the end they're getting their little fucking boxing match, and Cisco lays him out. And he's like, oh, you hit me. Jean-Luc never hit me. Well, I'm not Picard. And Q's like, you're not. You're easily riled up. And that makes things fun for me. Like,
Yeah. I actually like that note at the end. Say like, yeah, you're not. You're worse. Like you're not actually as calm and collected and able to see through things. You're actually kind of a pissed off guy. So I get
mhm.
to provoke you a lot more easily, and that's going to be amusing.
Yeah. You're lucky I'm not season 1 Q. Or do you remember how when like the goofy Tears of the Prophet or whatever the fuck that thing was, like made you relive meeting your wife on the beach, and that kind of fucked you up? Like, we're gonna go Hellraiser here, and you're gonna relive like watching her die on the Saratoga for like 16 hours and see how that goes. Because I could be that cute too.
So as the station continues to suffer this power drain, Vash is proceeding with her sale of these artifacts. She has a scene with Q in the kind of the hallway where Q continues to pitch like we need to continue to be together and do things together because I'm protecting you, and points out a bug bite that she got on some fucking Gamma Quadrant planet. That if Q had not been there, would apparently given her some sort of terrible flesh rotting disease that would have turned her into a 90-year-old in bad old age makeup. And I liked that idea of that like Quark or that Q was protecting her from some of the things and she didn't even know that in her arrogance, because that kind of is why they're a match for each other, is that they're both really arrogant and they're not seeing the value in each other very much. And Vash is still kind of dedicated to the idea that I'm just so done with you being lording over me that I'm just going to do the one thing I can do, which is reject you. It's the one thing you can't have any purchase over if I decide to reject you or not. And it's bothering you that I am. And so I'm going to keep doing it, you know?
Nerd moment to all of this, and they touch on it in Lower Decks. You know, there's a lot that goes into visiting the surface of a world, and they always gloss over, but like whatever the fucking Night in Sickbay piece of shit was, establishes like there's an exchange between governments of like, this is the stuff that we have that's going to fucking make you sick or whatever. Or there's a lot of like recon work by the science departments. You're not just, most of the time, you're not just beaming down to the surface with your dog so your dog can get sick with parasites or whatever dumb Jonathan Archer shit, or go down to like Planet Reefer Madness where everybody's going to go crazy. There's a lot of work that Starfleet puts into doing these away teams. And yeah, when you just show up on the surface somewhere to steal artifacts or whatever people are doing, nasty shit is out there waiting to get you. And space is a scary place. And when you're not using the full breadth of your magic space technology, shit like this happens. I was kind of hoping he was going to leave her looking old and crusty.
I get it, right? He's trying to tempt her into saying yes. And that means it can't be induced through like, if you don't say yes, I'm going to leave you old and crusty, because that would violate the word he gave to Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
So she has to choose to say yes because she sees the purpose and incentive. She has to want him. And if it's induced through fear of that I'm going to be left a decrepit old woman, then okay, yeah, you got what you wanted, but you didn't really earn it. You just did it out of fear.
I like when they get into the auction that you've got, what's Quark put it, filthy rich people who are all very stupid, including his own cousin. And when the auction actually starts, he gives the floor to Vash, and she, for whatever she is as far as an archaeologist, is not a salesperson. And she's talking to these dumb thug criminals that are rich, like she's talking to people at a Daystrom Institute presentation, and is not going over well. And Quark's basically like, listen, you're talking the wrong language. Let me show you how to sell black market artifacts.
Yeah, hold on.
I'm about to give a TED talk here. Nobody cares about the cultural significance. You got to stress the fact that you're going to be the only one of your friends with this dildo statue, and it's amazing.
So the sale is going on. Things are selling. It's kind of fun because Q's watching and he's like, yeah, the station's going to definitely explode. Maybe they'll figure it out, because he went up to Ops and kind of made fun of the fact that they hadn't figured it out yet.
I love that he says technobabble.
Yes. It's like
Like,
it would have all Jean-Luc and his boys would have figured this out with a bunch of technobabble a long time ago. Like insults O'Brien for being an extra. Like it's all meta.
Yeah, we're sitting here, we're talking about this. Like, this might be, Q isn't great for this episode, but this might be one of the best portrayals of Q when he's not in like super righteous judge mode. Like, he's hitting all the right shitty beats and really living up to like the trickster potential, and the fact that he doesn't really want to be there. He's just there because Vash is there, and this is an inconvenient pit stop. Like, it's very Rick and Morty in a good way. Why exactly? Like,
he also does give them the hint, right? To say Vash is the person you need to be looking into to determine what's going on. Because he's like real fucking tired of the fact they haven't figured it out yet.
Like, which they don't act on at all.
They don't. No, they just miss it. They just don't respond to it.
So something about the egg of doom / stingray egg, energy stingray egg, is drawing Deep Space Nine as an entire space station. It's tractor beaming it towards the wormhole. Why?
Yes.
I don't want to get into like
it's a life form. It wants to go back to the Gamma Quadrant.
It's going to suck the whole fucking space station towards, like, it's I care so little about this B plot that like I don't know why there's holes forming in the walls or any of the other bullshit, but I do think the idea of the entire space station going into the wormhole and the fact it's not a vessel built for like rough travels, that it will just crush it and fuck it up, is very interesting. But you've got this real doomsday scenario here. Then you got Benjamin Sisko, who doesn't like Q, is trying to antagonize him as much as he can, while at the same time demanding Q give him the answers. When Q does give him advice, he completely disregards it. And throughout the entire thing, again, while his son is on the space station that is about to be crunched into a black hole explosion extravaganza or whatever, like at no point is like, call the goddamn Enterprise. Get Picard on the phone. Like, give me the guy. Or if, like, he knows that Picard's going to be like, you didn't, like, antagonize him or punch him in the face or anything, or all the other stuff I put in that slideshow about, like, do not do this with Q. Like, maybe that's he doesn't want to talk to Picard. He just knows he's going to get lectured, and he doesn't need to get that again.
I do appreciate that they conclude that he's not the proximal cause of what's ever going on. He just happens to be here. And he's like got a connection to, like, they figure that out, but they don't pick up that he gives them the hint of what's going on. And my favorite part of the episode is when they finally come down to the auction to get rid of the MacGuffin. He basically says, "Oh God, finally, Jesus, it took you long." Like, you almost fucked it up. Like,
I also love that. I love they're so desperate they're like flooding the station with radon.
Yeah, well, give us all cancer, so we can't do that one. Like,
I don't know. They get pretty close. I think they get desperate and they really start pumping it in there. So I enjoy the ineptitude, or not the ineptitude, but just, exactly what you said. They're not building new technology to save the day. They're just trying to like shimmy around with the crap that they have and see if they can't finally nibble away and get an answer. But it's a bad look for Sisko, especially because there's so many obvious clues there. Up to Q just blatantly saying Vash is the fucking problem. Go look for her. Like, what's Odo doing through all this? Why can't Sisko been like, Odo, go check and see what's going on. See if there's anything goofy in there.
But in the end, they do transport the MacGuffin off, and it turns into a space bird and goes into the butthole, and that's the end of that.
I like the bidding. I like there's legit. How many thousand latinum? Like 300,000
latinum on the table when like Q overbids because he's trying to keep the auction going because he knows like eventually the crew's going to show up and get rid of this fucking thing. Like, I got to keep the fucking scene going. Like, it was like very meta.
Hey, there's a guy there in the back who's Starfleet who clearly doesn't give a fuck, and he just offered me 1 million latinum. I'm going to take his, like, he should be like, shoot, fuck, I don't know what you're doing here. Stop trolling us. Get out. I'm going to take this guy over here for 25,000 and we're going to be done. 1 million gold press latinum. Get the fuck out of here.
And kind of the plot just kind of politely wraps up with, Vash finally like getting through to Q, like, no, I'm going back to Earth. Sorry, Quark, I want to take a break from being an adventurer, and Q, no, really, I'm breaking up with you. And Q being like, okay, you know what? Fine. I finally accept that we're done. And he like leaves her with a little like, it was fun seeing things through your eyes because you're so enthusiastic about stuff. I'll miss the wonder. And, he's like, oh, I'll miss you too. And he's like, well, maybe I'll pop in, now and then. Whoosh, gone. And, suddenly she rethinks her going straight and immediately starts to J.O. Quark's ear one more time and says, hey, how do I get on a transport to raid my next tomb? And he's like, I'd be more than happy to show you on the way. Just keep going. Just keep going as we walk down there. It'll be great. And that's it. And then Bashir walks back in and Dax is like, yeah, okay.
We thought you were dead.
Like,
everybody has radiation poisoning. Where have you been?
So overall, it's not a terrible episode by any stretch. Q is fine in it, actually. And
I would say Q is good in it. I've seen the spectrum of the Q. I've seen the continuum of Q. This is good Q. I
mean, if we're grading on our curve of Q episodes, this is probably the best Q episode we've watched. But if you're grading it on the TNG curve with him as the much more better positioned, god figure that he is there. This is a lower tier Q circumstance. And Vash though
Just
does work better as a character, and I think it's unfortunate that we never see her again.
she would be a great reoccurring character through there, especially with Gamma Quadrant raids
Oh yeah.
for artifacts, and again the shady nature of DS9. Like, I'm surprised they didn't really strongly consider her as like a Garrick level reoccurring Federation trouble causer.
I wonder if
Uh,
like Jennifer Hedrick isn't somebody that has a huge career. She was just a TV actress. I don't know. It's strange to me that wasn't a choice they made. From Westerville, Ohio, by the way, is Vash. Jennifer Hedrick. So
that's
from your neck of the
very,
woods.
very close.
Yeah.
It's a shared school district, as a matter of fact. Maybe
So
I can go talk to her parents and be like, hey, if you guys are still alive, can I interview you? Why didn't your daughter do more with Star Trek?
so
Um,
but we have more Star Trek to do. Oh, and I'm sorry. You have more thoughts? You have any parting thoughts on
if
this?
Cisco had played his cards better, he could have like magic answered from Q, like, hey, where's the rest of these fucking tiers of the prophet so I could be done with this unification subplot? Like, that's always the problem with Q, though. Is, I mean, when you've got this guy could just answer all of the questions, fix all the problems, especially in Voyager, where, Janeway could have just rubbed his earlobes and jacked him off it,
That's all I wanted.
zapped the whole fucking crew home without having to, like, dirty barter with the fucking Borg.
That is
I'll point
nuts.
that out.
That is so nuts that is so a good point to bring up. I feel like we might have missed saying that specifically. We certainly brought up that it was madness that she just wasn't willing to, like, all right,
This is
fine.
my
Just
favorite
throw it.
dead horse to beat because there's
It
always
is.
more blood to squeeze out of that motherfucker.
It's like it would have. I think we did go down the road of like Janeway would have been so hard to let Q just throw it in and get all of your people home. Like, I'm sorry to say, like, prostitute yourself, but it seems like a lot easier than letting people die. I mean, I'm sure, like
You can sacrifice your own crew, but when it's going up the Northwest Passage and your options are to cooperate with the Borg or just set up shop in the Delta Quadrant and live there forever, or suck Q off so he takes everybody home, or ally yourself with Species 847. No, ally yourself with the Borg, kill off Species Mewtwo, and keep the Borg from getting stomped out. Like, just the worst possible decision of all time. Of all time.
yeah. But
All right, man.
what's great is our next episode, which is our next episode is not the most terrible episode of all time. What is it?
It's Dax. That's season 1, episode 8. Written by DC Fontana and Peter Allen Fields, who I think DC Fontana, she just passed, didn't she?
She passed a while ago. She was an OG Trek writer. She was an original series Trek writer, and her showing up here is extremely random because she did those, like early on in TNG. A lot of these guys did those season 1 scripts, a lot of which like felt like TOS episodes, like
Yes.
Naked Now and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
speaking of recently passed too, the father of the transporter.
Oh yeah, the actor who played that. I forget his name. Just much like his character was forgettable.
Yeah, Mr. Middle of the Road. Directed by David Carson. This is new evidence reopens a 30-year-old murder case, and Dax's previous host, Curzon, is a prime suspect. Didn't we just fucking do this with Man Apart? Somebody might, is a main cast member a killer? Only time will tell.
This is a much more interesting episode because it finally starts to give a little bit more insight to the complexities of Trill life and like having multiple lifetimes. And yeah, like DC Fontana having one random DS9. This is the last thing she ever wrote for Trek, right? Like this is one DS9 episode she did, and that when she was done. And I think it's very interesting because I think this has a bit like I went back through when I saw this in preparation of like the episodes she did for TOS, and they're all kind of these mystery episodes, I would call them. And I like that that's kind of the lane that she got into in writing, and she kind of adapted that for what essentially ended up being her final entry into Trek canon.
We'll have to see what shades of TOS this has to it. Here's my headcanon. The statute of limitations on a trill is dependent on the host body, and that has led to a very nasty practice within the species of like killing somebody, then eating a bunch of lead paint on your host so they have to die, and you get into a new host so you can like expunge your record.
It's like start rolling through them, to escape the consequences of your actions.
Oh,
Like,
this host is ugly. I don't like looking at this guy in the mirror. Or, oh, this guy's got a small dick. Back to the old paint mine. Back to Sherwin Williams.
Speaking of paint, here I am in my Battle Bridge paint. I can't sleep in my bed tonight. Ugh.
Enjoy the smell.
Yeah, indeed. And enjoy, V'ger, please. Enjoy our episodes. We will enjoy seeing you next week.